Let's not meet. There was a guy in my house, and I pretended he wasn't there. So, bit of background info. I currently live with my parents. The house is 2 stories. There is an in-law apartment on the first floor, along with some other things. Garage bay, furnace room, laundry room. I live in the in-law apartment. My dad has been working with a contractor and some of his employees to replace the wall-mounted air conditioners. There have been a lot of people in and out of the house. The day this happened, my mom and I went out to do some grocery shopping, and my dad stayed home to direct the contractors. We got back and discovered they were gone and my dad had gone to bed. So my mom and I made some dinner and hung out upstairs for a little while. I mentioned offhandedly to my mom that our cars were still outside, and I talked about a woman whose car and house had been broken into down the road. This creeped her out and she sent me downstairs to check that the front door was locked. It wasn't. In fact, it was a little bit ajar. I closed it and locked the deadbolt, then went back upstairs. We stayed upstairs and watched TV for a few more minutes, until I heard a loud thump downstairs in the in-law apartment. I assumed that this was my cat, getting antsy because I wasn't feeding her. I told my mom that I was going to go downstairs to feed her and then come up to finish the episode. As I walked down the stairs I heard another, louder thump which I thought was my cat getting excited it was food time. I opened the door and she was nowhere to be found. Really unusual for her, so I was confused. I walked into the kitchen to look for her and noticed something that made my heart sink. The furnace door was closed. I never close the furnace door, and neither do my parents, because we want the cat to be able to get inside to catch mice. I recognized then that the thunk I'd heard could have been the heavy furnace door closing. I was completely frozen, convinced that there was someone right behind that door, hiding from me. Now, I'd seen a lot of scary movies lately and it could have been paranoia, but this felt awful and not right. I knew that I didn't want to give this potential person any reason to open the door, so I put on my best acting skills and pretended that I'd noticed nothing amiss. I did some baby talk to my cat, who still hadn't materialized, and scooped out some food for her. I was super creeped out whenever I had to let the door out of my sight. I was basically keeping it in my vision at all times to see movement. After feeding the cat I went back upstairs. I grabbed my mom and explained what had happened. She was skeptical again. Scary movies. Paranoid and thought maybe one of the contractors had closed the door. But, seeing how off-put I was, she went to go wake up my dad. My dad grabbed his gun and went downstairs. He screamed up at us to call the cops and get somewhere safe. We hid in the bedroom and we called the cops, who showed up and searched the entire house, not finding anyone. My dad explained to me after they'd gone through the house why he'd said to call the cops. He saw that the furnace room door and the back door to the outside were both wide open. So, person who was hiding in my furnace room while my entire family was home. Let's not meet again. An out of the ordinary phone call. In 1987 or 1988, I was 8 or 9 years old, living in blue-collar suburb of Seattle. My mom had just started working after being a stay-at-home mom for many years, so my dad would now get me and my brother off to school in the morning. I would wake up when my dad was just getting into the shower that was attached to the master bedroom and would pour myself a bowl of cereal and watch early morning cartoons. This morning was different though. The phone rang. My dad being in the shower, I answered the phone. Cell phones were for rich people and cordless phones were a thing but still a rarity. Our phone was both connected into the wall and to the phone. I sat down on my parents' bed and I answered the phone. "Hello," I said. "Do you know who this is?" said the voice on the other end. It was an older man's voice. It sounded like my dad's voice but not quite. My dad didn't have many male friends and his best friend was his cousin Jerry, and for reason I assumed it was him. "Hi, Jerry. My dad's in the shower," I said. "That's okay. I wanted to talk to you. Do you want to come with me after school to get a present for your dad?" Since I believed that the other person on the other end didn't dispute he was Jerry, I didn't feel threatened, uncomfortable, or that this was anything but an opportunity to spend time with a family member and get my dad a present. I said something about that sounding fun and I would like to do it. I didn't even think it was odd at all, even though Jerry had never called that early in the morning and certainly had never asked me to go with him alone anywhere before. "What are you going to be wearing?" he asked. I was a little puzzled, but there are a lot of kids at my school and it could be hard to find me. "I'm going to wear my favorite outfit today, a black and white sweater that says international news on it with a white turtleneck and white stirrups," I said. BTW, this was the 80s. Stirrups were really popular and white pants were even more popular. For some, this part really sticks out in memory. It's like it's almost permanently embedded into my brain. Maybe it was because my mom just washed my favorite outfit and I was excited to wear it. Maybe I knew deep inside that something was off. But I remember the fluctuations in my voice. I remember the feeling of excitement. I just remember everything about this. "You know, there's so many kids. I might not find you. What do you look like?" he asked. Giggling, I said, "You know what I look like." This was the moment that my dad got out of the shower and he must have heard me talking because he walked really fast into the bedroom and said, "Who are you talking to?" "Jerry," I said. He grabbed the phone from my hand and said hello, but the line was dead and he hung up. He asked me what I said and I told him that Jerry was going to pick me up after school and he wanted to know what I was wearing. He told me that wasn't Jerry and not to wear that outfit and go eat breakfast. I thought it was odd when my dad picked me up for school and continued to do so for the next week. My dad always worked until 5 and was never home early. He never mentioned the phone call. He never mentioned what his thoughts were. He didn't even talk to me about not telling people what I was wearing on the phone. We literally never spoke about it. About a year ago, I was listening to a podcast about Amy Mihaljevic and I got super freaked out that she went missing after arranging to meet someone over the phone to get a surprise for her mom. We lived nowhere near each other, many states away, but it was eerily the same type of call. Was it someone trying to abduct me? Was it a prank call? I'll never know, but I don't want to find out. Angry stalker at the bus stop. So this happened last night and I'm still pretty shook up by it. I've had my fair share of creeps in real life and online, but I've never had an experience as real and scary as this one. So my friend was having a little party type get together thing at her boyfriend's uni house and I was invited, but because I was working Saturday morning I told her I'd probably be too tired to go. Anyway, I got home from work on Saturday, took a nap and I decided I wanted to go, but I'd have to leave early because I had work Sunday morning. So I messaged my other friend who drives and saw if she wanted to go, but she said it was too far. So I ended up getting the bus. Now I was dressed to go to a house party, so I felt a little out of place on the 7 PM bus, but I just put my headphones in and thought whatever. So I got to the party, stayed there for a few hours and then left at 10 PM. My friend walked me to the bus stop and there were 2 people stood there. She waited a few minutes with me, but it was freezing and she needed to pee, so I told her I'd be fine and she could go. So she went, and a few minutes after, one of the men at the bus stop came and stood really close to me. He asked me if the bus coming here was the 111 and I said yes. Then he didn't move and continued to stand really close to me. He started asking me questions, but I didn't know what he was saying because he had a really strong accent, so I asked him what he was saying a few times, but he just kept smiling and mumbling, so I looked away and just ignored him. Then he called me beautiful and I just shook my head. There was another man at the bus stop who came and stood next to me at this point. I just kept looking away and the man started touching my arm and I gave him a dirty look and moved away. I feel like in situations like this everyone thinks they'd tell the person to duck off or slap them or even run away. And previous to today I'd probably have said that too, but I just froze. I could have gone back to my friend's house and gotten the next bus, but I wouldn't have gotten home until 1 AM. And the Uber from where I was would have been £40 and I literally only had money for the bus. So I'm still stood there and then this man grabs my arm and leans forward to kiss me and I move away and frown at him. And the other man tells him to leave me alone. The creepy man then goes up to the other man and gets in his face and says, "What did you say?" And I'm just stood there thinking, if they start fighting here I have no clue what I'm going to do. So the other man just says, "I said leave her alone," and the creepy man puts his middle finger in the other man's face. The nice man says, "Duck you," and then the creepy man spits in his face. At this point I run away towards my friend's house and I start having a panic attack. I have no minutes or data left on my phone so I can't call anyone. I buy some more minutes and texts with my last £5 in my bank and start texting my friends. I couldn't call my dad because he was doing a night shift at work and my mum goes out with her boyfriend on Saturday nights. Also I was about an hour's drive from my house anyway so I wasn't expecting anyone to come and pick me up. As I'm walking to my friend's house and sobbing, the bus I was waiting for comes past and stops for me. There were tons of people on it so I got on and sat right by the driver. I used the bus's Wi-Fi to text my best friend and the friend whose house I'm at, and my best friend starts saying, "You're going to be fine. Just get off somewhere busy and get a taxi home." I was really stressed out because I was getting a bus into the city at 10 PM on a Saturday night. And then I had to get another bus home and I had no money for a taxi home from the city, and because it's Saturday night it's going to be even more expensive. So I'm telling my friend this, and next thing I know the creepy man comes downstairs on the bus and appears next to me. I had no idea he was on this bus so I start crying again and I'm texting my friend saying, "Oh my god, he's next to me, he's next to me." The creepy man asks the bus driver if this bus is going into the city, the same question he asked me at the bus stop, and the bus driver says yes. Then other people start to get on the bus and the creepy man is in the way so the driver asks him to move. The man says okay but doesn't move and just stands staring at me while I cry, so the driver asks him again and then the man sits behind me. I'm thinking and thinking what to do because I know he is going to follow me when I get off the bus. I'm still texting my best friend and she transfers me some money so I can get a taxi home from the city. First I thought I'd get off and ask a man if I can stand with him, but everywhere the bus stopped all the men I saw were in huge groups and looked really drunk, so that scared me too. So next I'm thinking I'll get off the bus near a nightclub or bar so I can stand with the bouncers at the door. We get to the city and a few people line up to get off the bus on a busy road, so when the doors open I quickly jump off before them. And to my surprise the creepy man doesn't get off the bus. So then I walk through the busiest parts of city crying on the phone to my best friend and I order a taxi. Then my friend whose party it was rings me and she feels really bad for leaving me at the bus stop, but I explained that he probably would have been creepy on the bus even if she stayed and that I didn't even expect her to walk to the bus stop with me, so she was sweet for doing that. Safe to say I'll never be getting the bus that late again if I can help it. The guy and his wife who tried to abduct me. The only people that know this story is my grandmother and myself, and I don't believe my grandmother ever said anything to my parents. When I was young I stayed with my grandmother during the day because my parents both worked full time and they knew my grandmother would be overjoyed to keep me. So when I was around 7 I was playing in her driveway. She lives in the middle of a suburb in Alabama where I could throw a rock and hit half of the houses on the street, and she knows all the neighbors. So I was playing and this white Bronco pulls up at the end of the driveway but doesn't turn in, probably about 40 feet from me. There was a man in the passenger seat and a woman that I presume was his wife driving. The man leaned out of the window and asked for directions to the next town over. So in response I yelled the directions out. He called out and said that he couldn't hear me and that I needed to get closer. I took one step closer, still way out of reach of him, and I yelled the directions out again and a little louder. He said that I needed to come closer again and I was about to when my grandmother, who I guess heard me from the kitchen, came out onto the porch and called me back over and the car drove away when he saw her. I tried to repress that memory for years but I never could, and it haunts me to this day to think of what would have happened to me if she would have just been in a different room. I also think this is what caused me to develop the anxiety that I have. So yeah, duck you whoever you are, and I don't wanna ever meet you again. TLDR. Almost got abducted from my grandmother's driveway and was only saved because she could hear me talking to someone from the kitchen. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content. It's free and that's a great price.